The great dome of the cartography chamber stretched higher than any building on 100 worlds. Its curved ceiling displayed the entire galaxy in perfect detail. Every star burned with soft light. Every trade route glowed in blue and gold. Every territorial boundary shimmered with the colors of the species who claimed that space. Counselor Vethran stood at the center of the chamber and turned slowly, taking in the magnificent display above her. Her crystalline body caught the light of 1,000,000 projected stars, scattering rainbows across the polished floor. She had served on the Galactic Council for 30 years, and she had seen this map thousands of times. But today, something bothered her. "Archivist," she called out, her voice echoing in the vast space. "Come here, please." An elderly creature shuffled forward from the shadows. Archivist Malden belonged to a species known for their perfect memory. His kind had kept the records of the Council for 10,000 years. His gray skin hung loose on his thin frame, and his four eyes blinked slowly as he approached. "How may I serve you, Counselor?" he asked. Vethran pointed upward at a specific region of the map. "That section. Explain it to me." Malden followed her gesture and immediately looked away. "That is the Forbidden Zone, Counselor. There is nothing to explain. Nothing to explain." Vethran walked closer to stand directly beneath the area in question. Unlike the rest of the map, this region showed no stars, no routes, no boundaries. It was simply gray, a perfect sphere of emptiness in an otherwise complete picture of the galaxy. Ancient warning symbols floated within the gray space, written in languages so old that most species had forgotten how to read them. "We have mapped every corner of this galaxy," Vethran said. "We have cataloged every asteroid, every moon, every gas cloud. We have trade agreements with species who live in the hearts of dying stars. And yet this entire sector remains blank. In an age when we can count the atoms in a nebula." Malden shifted uncomfortably. "It has always been this way, Counselor. Since before my grandfather's grandfather began his service." "That is not an answer. That is tradition dressed up as wisdom." Vethran's crystalline form pulsed with frustration. "What is in that space? Who lives there? Why is it forbidden?" The old archivist was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "The humans, Counselor. That is human space." Vethran searched her memory. The name sounded familiar, like a half-remembered dream. "Humans. I have heard this word before. In old stories. They were one of the founding species, were they not? From the early days of the Council?" "They were, Counselor. 2,000 years ago, they participated in the formation of our great alliance." Malden's eyes darted around the empty chamber as if checking for listeners. "And then they left. An entire species simply left the galactic community?" "There was a disagreement," Malden said carefully. "The records from that time are incomplete. What remains suggests that the humans withdrew from all contact with other species. They sealed their borders. They asked to be forgotten." He gestured at the gray zone above them. "The Council honored their request. Their space was removed from official maps. Their history was archived and restricted. Within a few generations, most species forgot they ever existed." Vethran stared at the blank space with new eyes. 2,000 years of isolation. No trade, no communication, no contact of any kind. She calculated quickly in her mind. They must be extinct by now. No species could survive that long without the resources of galactic civilization. "Perhaps," Malden said, but his voice carried doubt. Before Vethran could ask more questions, the great doors of the cartography chamber burst open. A young messenger rushed in, gasping for breath. "Counselor, emergency session. The Mendari refugees have arrived." Vethran knew about the Mendari situation. Everyone did. Their empire had collapsed 6 months ago when their sun began dying faster than predicted. 40 million Mendari now drifted through space in a massive fleet of ships, searching desperately for a new home. They had applied to settle in dozens of systems, but every species had refused them. No one wanted to absorb 40 million hungry refugees. The council chamber was already full when Vethran arrived. Representatives from every major species filled the circular room, their voices raised in argument. At the center of the chaos stood a Mendari representative. His scales had lost their shine from stress and poor nutrition. His eyes carried the desperate look of someone who had watched their entire civilization crumble. Please, the Minbari begged. We ask for nothing more than empty space, uninhabited systems, worlds that no one else wants. We will take the worst planets you have. We will live in asteroid belts if we must, but my people cannot drift forever. Our ships are failing. Our children are starving. The Speaker of the Council, a massive creature named Horthval, shook his head slowly. We sympathize with your situation, Representative. Truly we do. But there is no unclaimed space left in the galaxy. Every system belongs to someone. That is not true, the Minbari said. There is the Gray Zone, the Forbidden Region. Our scouts have detected hundreds of habitable worlds within that space. Worlds with no settlements, no stations, no signs of civilization. Silence fell over the chamber. The speaker's face darkened. That space is forbidden. It has been forbidden for 2,000 years. But why? The Minbari spread his arms wide. I have researched your archives. There are no active claims on that territory. The species who once lived there are gone. Dead or departed, it matters not. My people are dying now, today, while you cling to ancient superstitions about empty space. The council members whispered among themselves. Vethran could see the calculations happening behind their eyes. If the Minbari settled in the Forbidden Zone, the council would be free of the refugee crisis without having to sacrifice any of their own territory. The humans, Vethran spoke up. The space belongs to the humans. Every eye in the chamber turned to her. The speaker frowned. The humans are a myth, counselor. A legend from the early days of the council. They no longer exist, if they ever did. The archives say otherwise. They withdrew 2,000 years ago. They asked to be forgotten. But their space was never legally ceded to the council. A crystalline elder from Vethran's own delegation stood and placed a hand on her shoulder. Young counselor, you speak of ancient history. Whatever the humans once were, they are certainly extinct now. No species survives to millennia of complete isolation. Their worlds are empty, waiting for someone to claim them. The vote happened quickly. Despite Vethran's objections, the council officially opened the Forbidden Zone. The gray area on the map was redesignated as available for settlement. The ancient warning symbols were removed and archived as historical curiosities. The Minbari representative wept with relief. Thank you. Thank you all. You have saved my people. Vethran watched the celebration with growing unease. Something felt wrong. The archives had been too deliberately incomplete. The warnings too carefully preserved. Species did not simply ask to be forgotten without reason. That night, she accessed the restricted historical files. Most were corrupted or missing, but she found one fragment that had survived the centuries. A single message, recorded on the day the humans sealed their borders. A human face appeared on her screen. It was a strange face by galactic standards. Soft skin, 2 eyes, hair growing from the top of its head. But the expression on that face was what caught Vethran's attention. It was not angry. It was not sad. It was disappointed. We will forget you, the human said. All of you. Your names, your faces, your crimes against us. We will erase you from our memory and move forward alone. We suggest you do the same. Forget we exist. Forget our space. Forget everything about us. The human paused, and something flickered in its eyes. Something that might have been warning, or might have been mercy. Because if you remember us, you might be tempted to come looking. And if you come looking, you'll find us. And if you find us, the human smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Well, let us hope it never comes to that. The recording ended. 3 days later, the first Minbari survey ships entered the Gray Zone. They carried advanced scanning equipment and eager crews ready to find new homes for their dying people. Their last transmission came 6 hours after crossing the border. The message was brief, the voice of the captain shaking with confusion and fear. This space is not empty. Repeat, this space is not empty. There are lights activating everywhere. Thousands of them. Millions of them. They were waiting. They were waiting in the dark, and they knew we were coming. The transmission cut off. Then there was only silence. Vethran stood in the cartography chamber and watched the gray zone on the map above her. It remained blank and featureless, showing nothing of what lay within. But she knew now that the emptiness was a lie. The humans had not died. They had not faded away into extinction. They had been waiting. For 2,000 years, they had been waiting in the darkness. And now, because the Council had forgotten the warnings of the past, they would learn why those warnings existed in the first place. The silence from the gray zone stretched on. No ships returned. No messages came. The galaxy held its breath and waited to see what would emerge from the space. They had been told to forget. In the darkness of human Torito, Vethran felt her hearts freeze. The humans had just killed 40 million people with a single word. But then the scanny. Vethran felt her hearts freeze. The humans had just killed 40 million people with a single word. But then the scanny Admiral Krethvor stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Invincible Flame. Around him stretched the largest military force assembled in 300 years. 12,000 warships from 6 major species, 2 million soldiers, enough firepower to crack planets and boil oceans. The Council had authorized the expedition after 3 days of heated debate. The official purpose was peaceful. They were a diplomatic mission, sent to establish communication with whoever lived in the gray zone. But Krethvor knew the truth. He had read the reports. He had seen what one small human vessel did to the Mendari fleet. He was not here to talk. He was here to show these humans that the Council was not to be trifled with. "We are approaching the border," his navigation officer announced. Entering the gray zone in 30 seconds, Krethvor straightened his uniform. He was a veteran of 100 campaigns. He had crushed rebellions and conquered worlds. He had never lost a battle in his 50 years of service. Whatever the humans could do, he was confident his armada could do better. "All ships maintain formation," he ordered. "Weapons hot, but do not fire unless fired upon. We want them to see our strength before we begin negotiations." The fleet crossed the border in perfect order. Thousands of warships moving as one, their hulls gleaming under distant starlight. They flew deeper into human space, sensors scanning for any sign of the enemy. Hours passed. They found nothing. No ships, no stations, no planets with cities or industry. The space ahead seemed truly empty. "Perhaps they ran," one of his officers suggested. "Perhaps they saw our fleet and fled." Krethvor doubted it. A species that could freeze weapons in flight did not run from anything. Then they found the Mendari. 20,000 refugee ships drifted in a wide formation ahead. All of them dark, all of them silent, just as the reports had described. "Life signs confirmed," the scanning officer reported. "All Mendari refugees are alive but unconscious. No signs of damage to any vessel." Krethvor studied the drifting fleet. Whatever weapon the humans had used, it had disabled every ship without causing any harm to the passengers. That kind of precision was beyond anything he had ever seen. His confidence began to crack, just a little. "Admiral," the sensor officer's voice rose in alarm. "New contacts." Multiple new contacts appearing directly ahead. Krethvor looked at the display. His heart stopped. Ships were appearing from nowhere, not arriving from hyperspace, not coming from behind planets or moons. They were simply appearing, as if they had been invisible and were now choosing to be seen. First a dozen, then 100, then 1,000. Within minutes, a fleet of human vessels hung in space before his armada. They were smaller than his warships, simpler in design, but there were so many of them. 10,000, 20,000. The number kept climbing. Where did they come from? Krethvor demanded. Where were they hiding? "Unknown, Admiral. Our sensors detected nothing until they appeared. It is as if they were existing slightly out of phase with normal space." Before Krethvor could respond, 3 figures materialized on his bridge. Everyone reacted at once. Guards drew weapons. Officers shouted. Krethvor himself reached for his sidearm, but the 3 figures simply stood there, unafraid. They were humans, 2 males and 1 female. They wore simple gray clothing with no decorations or rank insignia. Their faces were calm, patient, like teachers waiting for a classroom to settle down. "Please," the female said. Her voice was quiet, but somehow carried across the entire bridge. "There is no need for weapons. We are here to talk." "How did you get on my ship?" Krethvor demanded. "Our shields are at full power. Nothing can transport through them." The female smiled slightly. "Your shields work very well against the technologies you know. We have had 2,000 years to develop technologies you do not know. This is an act of war." Boarding a military vessel without permission. We boarded because you came with an army to our doorstep. We thought a conversation might prevent misunderstanding. She looked around the bridge at the frozen crew. My name is Sarah. These are my colleagues, James and Michael. We speak for humanity in this matter. Krethvor forced himself to release his weapon. The humans had made their point. If they wanted to board his ship, his shields could not stop them. If they wanted to hurt him, there was nothing he could do to prevent it. Very well, he said through gritted teeth. Let us talk. You have disabled a refugee fleet and captured several of our vessels. We demand an explanation. We disabled a fleet that attacked us, Sarah said. We captured vessels that invaded our space with weapons armed and hostile intentions. Every being on those vessels is alive and unharmed. Can you say the same for your past military actions, Admiral? Krethvor had no answer. His campaigns had left millions dead. That was the nature of war. The Mendari will wake in a few hours, Sarah continued. They will remember nothing of the violence they attempted. Their ships will function again. They are free to leave, and if they choose to stay, if they still need homes for their people. Sarah exchanged a look with her colleagues. That is a different conversation, one we are willing to have, but not with warships pointing at our worlds. You expect us to simply withdraw, to show weakness? We expect you to show wisdom. Sarah stepped closer to the Admiral. Despite being smaller than him, she somehow seemed to fill the entire bridge. 2,000 years ago, your ancestors sent 1,000 warships to destroy our homeworld. We stopped them. We could have destroyed your entire civilization in retaliation. We chose not to. We chose to leave instead, to give you space to grow beyond your fears. Krethvor felt cold. That is ancient history. None of us were responsible for those actions. No. But you came here with 12,000 warships to respond to our defense of our own borders. You brought an army to punish us for stopping an attack on our homes. Sarah shook her head slowly. 2,000 years, and you have learned nothing. The Admiral struggled to maintain his composure. We came to negotiate, to understand what happened. You came to intimidate, to show us your strength and demand submission. Sarah gestured at the human fleet visible through the bridge windows. Let me show you why that was a mistake. She did not raise her voice. She did not move. But suddenly the display screens round the bridge changed. They no longer showed tactical data or fleet positions. Instead, they showed images from around the galaxy. The Council homeworld. A dozen human ships hovering in orbit, completely undetected by any defense system. The industrial centers of the crystalline hegemony. Human vessels sitting in the shadows of asteroid fields, watching. The military academies of the Thorian Empire. The shipyards of the Mendari. The research stations of a dozen species. All of them with human observers nearby, silent, hidden, watching. We never left. Sarah said quietly. We withdrew from contact, but we never stopped watching. For 2,000 years, we have monitored every major species in this galaxy. We know your secrets, Admiral. We know your strengths and weaknesses. We know things about your own government that you do not. Krethvor stared at the images. Human ships had been observing his homeworld for centuries. They could have attacked at any time. They could have destroyed everything he knew before anyone realized the danger. Why? He asked. Why watch us all this time? Because we hoped you would grow. We hoped you would become better than the species who tried to murder us. We wanted to believe that if we gave you enough time, you would be worthy of friendship again. Sarah's expression shifted. Something sad entered her eyes. We are still waiting. She turned to leave, then paused. You may withdraw your fleet peacefully. No one will be harmed. Or you may try to fight us. The choice is yours. But Admiral, I urge you to think carefully. We have never used our full capabilities against anyone. We have never needed to. Do not be the one who forces us to change that. Krethvor looked at his crew. He looked at the human fleet outside. He looked at the images on his screens showing human vessels throughout Council space. Watching. Waiting. If we withdraw, he said slowly, what happens next? That depends on you. On all of you. We did not start this. Your council voted to open our space. Your refugees attacked our vessels. Your military came to our borders with weapons ready. Sarah met his eyes. You can end this peacefully. or you can discover why your ancestors chose to forget us rather than face us again." The Admiral weighed his options. He had 12,000 warships, 2 million soldiers, more firepower than any fleet in Council history. And he knew, with absolute certainty, that none of it mattered. "Stand down," he ordered his crew. "All ships, power down weapons, and hold position." Sarah nodded. "A wise choice, Admiral. We will be in contact with your council soon. There's much to discuss." The three humans vanished as suddenly as they had appeared. Krethvor slumped into his command chair. He had never lost a battle in 50 years. Today, he had lost without a single shot being fired. And somehow, he knew that was the best possible outcome. Outside, the human fleet continued to watch, patient, silent, waiting to see if the galaxy had finally learned its lesson. The council chamber had never been so full. Representatives from every known species crowded the circular room. Even those who usually sent only minor delegates had dispatched their highest leaders. The news had spread across the galaxy in hours. The humans had returned, and they had brought truth with them. Counselor Vethran stood near the central podium, watching the crowd with growing unease. 3 days had passed since Admiral Krethvor's fleet withdrew from human space. 3 days of silence while the galaxy waited. Now, a human delegation had requested permission to address the council. No one had the courage to refuse. The doors opened. 3 humans walked in, the same ones who had appeared on the Admiral's bridge. Sarah, James, and Michael. They wore the same simple gray clothing. They carried no weapons, no guards, no symbols of authority. Yet every eye in the chamber followed them. Sarah stepped up to the speaking platform. She looked around at the assembled representatives, her expression unreadable. "Thank you for receiving us," she began. "We know this is difficult. Many of you have never seen a human before. Some of you were taught that we no longer exist. We understand your confusion and your fear." Speaker Horthval shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "We are prepared to hear your concerns. If there have been misunderstandings, there have been no misunderstandings," Sarah interrupted. Her voice remained calm, but it cut through the chamber like a blade. "You knew exactly what you were doing when you opened our space to settlement. You hoped we were dead. You hoped you could take our worlds without consequences. You were wrong." "The council meant no offense," Horthval said. "We believed the gray zone was uninhabited. If we had known, you did know." Sarah touched a device on her wrist. The massive display screen behind her flickered to life. "You always knew. You simply chose to forget." Documents appeared on the screen. Ancient records, marked with the seals of the Founding Council. Authorization orders. Military deployment schedules. Target lists with human worlds clearly marked. 2,000 years ago, the founding races voted to exterminate humanity. They sent 2,000 warships to destroy our cities and murder our families. They called it population management. They told themselves it was necessary for galactic stability. Sarah paused, letting the words sink in. They tried to commit genocide, and when they failed, they erased the evidence. They removed us from their maps and their histories. They told their children we never existed. The chamber erupted in shouting. Representatives accused each other of lies. Some demanded proof. Others demanded Sarah's immediate arrest. Through it all, the humans stood calm and silent. Vethran watched the chaos with horror. She had seen the ancient files. She knew the truth. But seeing it displayed for everyone, hearing the accusations spoken aloud, made it real in a way she had not expected. Sarah raised her hand. The chamber fell silent instantly, not because she had any authority over them, but because they were all suddenly afraid of what she might do if they kept shouting. "We did not come here to punish you for the crimes of your ancestors. We came to show you what happens when truth is buried." She touched her device again. The screen changed. New documents appeared. But these were not ancient. These were current. Financial records, communication logs, secret agreements between council members. "For 2,000 years, we watched you. We observed your governments, your corporations, your militaries. We saw everything you tried to hide." Sarah's voice carried across the silent chamber. "The Thorian Empire has been secretly funding pirate attacks against trade routes for profit. The crystalline hegemony has been conducting illegal experiments on lower species. In hidden research facilities, The Mendari collapse was not natural. 3 council races accelerated the death of their sun to eliminate an economic competitor. Gasps filled the room. The Mendari representative stared at the screen, his face frozen in shock. His son had been murdered. His people had been made refugees by design. The corruption runs deep, Sarah continued. Every major power in this council has crimes hidden in its archives. Bribery, assassination, slavery, biological warfare. She looked at Speaker Horthval. Even you, Speaker. We know about the colony ships that disappeared 3 centuries ago. We know where you sent them. We know what you did to their passengers. Horthval's face went pale. He tried to speak, but no words came out. We could destroy you all. Sarah's voice dropped low, but somehow it still reached every corner of the chamber. We have ships in orbit around every major world. We have technology that makes your most advanced weapons look like toys. We could end your civilizations tonight and begin again with species who might do better. Silence. Absolute, terrified silence. But we will not. Sarah's expression softened slightly. Because we remember what it was like to be small. We remember what it was like to be afraid. We remember being the ones marked for death by larger powers. We will not become what nearly destroyed us. She stepped back from the podium. James moved forward, carrying a data crystal. This contains evidence of every crime we have uncovered over 2 millennia. Every corrupt official, every hidden atrocity, every lie that holds your civilization together. He placed the crystal on the podium. We are giving it to you, not as a weapon to use against each other, but as an opportunity to change. Michael spoke next. The truth will be broadcast to every inhabited world in 6 hours. Every citizen in the galaxy will see what their leaders have done. What happens after that is up to you. You can punish the guilty and build something better, or you can tear yourselves apart fighting over the ruins of your old power structures. Why? Vethren finally found her voice. Why give us this chance? After everything we have done, why help us? Sarah looked at her with something that might have been respect. Because 2,000 years ago, we faced a choice. We could have avenged ourselves on the species who tried to murder us. We had the power. We had the right. But we chose differently. We chose to wait. We chose to hope. We chose to believe that given enough time, you could become worthy of friendship. She glanced around the chamber at the stunned representatives. We are still not sure if our hope was justified. But we are giving you one more chance to prove us right. The humans turned to leave. At the doorway, Sarah paused and looked back. The truth broadcast cannot be stopped. In 6 hours, everything will change. Use that time wisely. They walked out, leaving behind a chamber full of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, all of them sitting in shocked silence. Vethren picked up the data crystal. It felt heavier than it should. The weight of 2,000 years of lies compressed into a tiny object. Around her, the chaos began. Representatives rushed to contact their homeworlds. Some tried to flee the station. Others collapsed into despair as they realized their secrets were about to be exposed. 3 governments fell before the 6 hours were up. Leaders who had held power for centuries were dragged from their offices by their own people. Species that had been enemies for generations discovered they had been manipulated into conflict by the same corrupt officials. When the broadcast finally came, it changed everything. Trillions of citizens watched the evidence of their leaders' crimes. Some reacted with rage, some with grief, some with a strange kind of relief, as if they had always known something was wrong and finally had proof. Vethren watched the chaos unfold from her observation window. Fires burned on a dozen worlds. Governments collapsed. Fleets mutinied. Everything the old council had built was crumbling. But in the ashes, something new was growing. For the first time in memory, ordinary citizens were demanding accountability from their leaders. For the first time, the truth was more powerful than the lies that had controlled them. The humans had not conquered the galaxy. They had done something far more devastating. They had set it free. And now, the galaxy would have to decide what to do with that freedom. 6 months had passed since the truth broadcast. The galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. Counselor Vethran stood at the entrance to a human city, watching the morning light filter through crystalline towers that seemed to grow from the ground, like living things. Behind her, a delegation of reformed council representatives waited in nervous silence. Ahead, a path of smooth stone led through gardens where plants from 100 worlds grew together in impossible harmony. This was humanity's homeworld, the planet they had protected for 2,000 years, the place they had retreated to when the galaxy tried to destroy them. Sarah appeared on the path ahead, walking toward them with the same calm grace Vethran remembered from the council chamber. But here, in her own world, she seemed different, softer, more at peace. "Welcome," Sarah said. "You are the first outsiders to visit Earth since the separation. I am glad it is you." Vethran bowed her crystalline head. "We are honored to be received. After everything that has happened, we were not sure you would agree to see us. We almost did not," Sarah admitted. She began walking, and the delegation followed. "Many of our people believe we should remain isolated. They remember the genocide attempt. They fear what might happen if we lower our guard." "Then why did you invite us?" Sarah smiled slightly. "Because isolation was never meant to be permanent. We withdrew to protect ourselves and to give the galaxy time to mature. Now, for the first time in 2,000 years, real change is happening out there. We want to see if it lasts." They walked through the city in wonder. Buildings blended seamlessly with natural formations. Rivers ran through streets without any barriers. People moved about their lives without any visible security or military presence. "Where are your weapons?" asked Admiral Krethvor, who had joined the delegation as a gesture of good faith. "Your defenses?" "Everywhere and nowhere," Sarah answered. "When you can disable a fleet with a thought, you do not need to carry obvious weapons. Our entire civilization is protected by systems you cannot see or understand. But we do not fear attack anymore. Not from you, certainly." Krethvor lowered his head. He had come to apologize, to admit that everything he had believed about humanity was wrong. But standing here, surrounded by proof of their superiority, he found words inadequate. "I spent my entire life preparing for war," he said quietly. "I thought strength meant being able to destroy your enemies. Now I see that true strength means never having to destroy anyone." Sarah nodded. "That is a lesson we learned the hard way. When our ancestors realized they could defeat any fleet in the galaxy, they faced a choice. They could conquer everything and rule through fear, or they could protect what they loved and let others find their own way. They chose the second path, but you still watched us," Vethran said. "You still kept your ships hidden in our space." "Yes, because we hoped we would eventually be needed, not as conquerors or saviors, but as guides, as examples of what is possible when power is used wisely." They reached a large open space at the center of the city. Thousands of humans had gathered there, along with something that made the delegation stop in their tracks. Mendari refugees, not in camps or temporary housing. They were living in human buildings, working alongside human scientists, their children playing with human children in the gardens. 40 million people who had been abandoned by the galaxy, given a home by the species that had every reason to hate all outsiders. The Mendari representative from the council stepped forward, tears streaming down his scaled face. "You took them in after they attacked you?" "They were desperate," Sarah said simply. "They had lost everything. Their son was murdered by those they thought were allies. When they attacked our border ship, it was not hatred that drove them. It was fear." She gestured at the happy crowds. "We gave them worlds to settle, 15 planets that we terraformed over the centuries, preparing for refugees we knew would eventually come. You knew? We watched the galaxy for 2,000 years. We saw the corruption growing. We saw species being pushed to extinction by their neighbors. We knew that eventually someone would need help that only we could provide." Sarah's expression turned serious. "We could not save everyone. We cannot fix all the problems of the galaxy. But we could prepare for this moment. We could be ready to help when help was finally wanted." Vethran felt something shift inside her. For her entire life, she had believed that power existed to be used against others, to protect your own kind and defeat your enemies. The idea that someone might use power simply to help strangers, expecting nothing in return, seemed almost impossible to understand. "What happens now?" she asked. "Will you rejoin the galactic community?" Sarah considered the question. "Perhaps, eventually, but not yet. The old council is dead. You are building something new." We want to see what you create before we decide whether to participate. We need your guidance, your wisdom. You have technologies and knowledge that could help billions. And that is exactly why we must wait. Sarah led them to a building at the edge of the square. Inside, a massive holographic display showed the galaxy in perfect detail. Every star, every world, every ship in motion. If we gave you everything now, you would become dependent on us. You would stop growing. You would expect us to solve all your problems instead of learning to solve them yourselves. She pointed to the section of the map that had once been gray. It was no longer blank. Human space now showed cities and stations and thriving colonies, but it was still separated from the rest of the galaxy by a clear boundary. We will open our borders slowly. Trade agreements first. Cultural exchanges. Student programs. We will share knowledge as you prove ready to receive it. Sarah turned to face the delegation. We are not conquerors. We are not saviors. We are gardeners. We planted seeds 2,000 years ago when we chose mercy over revenge. Now we want to see what grows. The delegation spent 3 days on Earth. They saw wonders that defied explanation. Technologies that seemed like magic. Art that made them weep with beauty. And everywhere, they saw humans living in peace with each other and with the Mendari refugees who had been given sanctuary. On the last day, Vethran asked to speak with Sarah alone. They walked through a garden where flowers bloomed in colors that had no names. The warning symbols, Vethran said. The ancient glyphs that marked your space as forbidden. I always assumed they were threats, warnings to stay away or face destruction. And now I think they were something else. A prayer, maybe, or a hope. You were asking the galaxy to leave you alone so you could become something better than what tried to destroy you. She looked at the human woman beside her. You were protecting us from ourselves. Sarah nodded slowly. When the genocide fleet came, our ancestors had a choice. They could have struck back and started an endless cycle of revenge. Or they could walk away and give the galaxy a chance to grow up. She knelt beside a flower and touched its petals gently. They chose to believe that eventually, the species that tried to murder them could become friends. It took 2,000 years. Many of our people died still waiting. But they never stopped hoping. And now, Sarah stood and looked at Vethran with eyes that held centuries of patience. Now we wait a little longer. You have made progress, real progress. But old habits die slowly. We will watch. We will help when we can. And when the galaxy is truly ready, we will come out of the shadows and take our place among you as equals. The delegation returned to Council Space with new hope and new purpose. The reformed Galactic Assembly began its work of rebuilding civilization on foundations of truth, instead of lies. It would take generations to undo all the damage of the past, but for the first time, there was real hope that it could be done. Years later, Vethran returned to the cartography chamber. The Great Dome still displayed the galaxy in all its glory, but the gray zone was gone. In its place, human space glowed with warm light, and at the center of that space, a single symbol marked Earth itself. Not a warning, not a threat, just a simple phrase in the common tongue that every species could read. The sanctuary, a place for the lost, a home for the forgotten, a reminder that true strength was not measured by the power to destroy, but by the courage to protect. The humans had waited 2,000 years for the galaxy to be ready for friendship. They had watched from the shadows as civilizations rose and fell. They had kept their secrets and prepared for the day when they would be needed. That day had finally come, and the galaxy would never forget again. Vethran touched the image of Earth on the display and smiled. The price of forgetting had been paid. Now it was time to build something worth remembering.